Lowry, for 19 minutes and 36 seconds.
11:26 a.m. What is that entry?
Detective Bethel reaches out to the defendant asking, "Where are you? Would you like a coffee or soda?" And the defendant doesn't respond for about 10 minutes.
The next entry at 11:36 a.m. to 11:40 a.m. What is that?
In response to the coffee or soda, the defendant says, "Died, diet, park, thank you."
What's the continuation of that conversation between Detective Bethel and the defendant?
Detective Bethel says, "Okay, where are you parked? Do we need to make sure a meter gets fed, or do I need to validate parking?" The defendant says, "I'm not sure. That's what I'm trying to figure out where to go." And then Detective Bethel says, "You can park in the garage behind the building and I will validate for you."
By indications of the investigation, did the defendant in fact park in the garage at the sheriff's office?
She did.
The next entry at 11:57 a.m. to 11:58 a.m. What is that entry?
The defendant asks Detective Bethel, "What's the name again?" Detective Bethel responds, "Office of the Sheriff." The defendant says, "I'm here. They said you would be out shoring," and then corrects herself and says, "shortly."
And then we heard testimony from other detectives about the vehicle showing up and it appeared to have been washed and was still wet. Does that corroborate with this information, the defendant showing up and the vehicle was wet at that time?
It was, and that's when we seized the vehicle.
The next entry is at 12 p.m. What is that?
The defendant does the interview with the El Paso County Sheriff's Office under Exhibit 337, and that's when we seize the defendant's phone.
Okay. And then, so does that essentially then, as the investigation progresses from that point forward, do we get any Tiguan telematics data after that point?
No, we seized it and we're searching it and we're taking it apart to get the telematics data.
And then as it relates to her phone call detail records and that sort of thing, any data from the phone going from the end of that interview at roughly 4 p.m. on the 29th forward until she's arrested, do we have any data for that particular phone?
No, we seized the phone to download it. And so there's no more call detail records with this phone number. There's no more Life 360 GPS hits with this phone. And so now the defendant is without a car and a phone.
Okay. The next entry is at 2:18 p.m. What is that?
Harley messages the defendant saying, "Uncle wants you to call him." And this is getting towards the halfway point of the interview. And the defendant messages back, "Okay, love you."
And so does this text message actually come into the defendant while she's in the interview room?
It does. And this is the last message the defendant sends using this phone.
Okay. The next entry is at 4:20 p.m. What is that?
We played the interview. And so towards the end, the defendant started complaining of shortness of breath and chest pains on top of a rape story. And so the defendant is transported from the sheriff's office to Memorial Hospital.
The next entry is at 5:30 p.m. What is that?
Harley clocks out of work.
The next entry is from at 7:52 a.m. You have a squiggly line in front of the 7. What does that squiggly line mean, first of all?
So that's approximately. So it's going to be around 7:52 p.m. The defendant left Memorial Hospital.
Why do we have an approximate time there as opposed to before when we've had very specific times?
We don't have the phone anymore with the Life 360 GPS or the towers or anything like that. So it's just based on witnesses and their account.
Does this coincide with the testimony that we had from forensic nurse examiner Amanda Van Nest about the defendant leaving from the hospital before completing the examination?
This part, yes, when the defendant left the hospital.
The next entry is at 8:31 p.m. What is that?
8:31, we heard testimony through Janine Sanchez that she went with Harley and picked up the defendant at the Taco Bell. And then they went and stayed the night at Ms. Sanchez's residence.
That Taco Bell, what's the address of that, first of all?
The Taco Bell is 390 North Union.
Is that in fairly close proximity to the hospital, Memorial Hospital?
It's very close. It's within walking distance.
And then the next timed entry that we have is at 8:48 p.m. What is that?
8:48. So the defendant's phone is no longer in play. So now we have Harley's phone. And based on some statements from Ms. Sanchez, we don't know who's sending this message. But it's coming from Harley's phone to the defendant's sister, Amy Lowry. And it says, "We have to take location off and get another number. We will call you back."
The next entry at 9:16 a.m. to 9:16 p.m. to 9:19 p.m. What is that entry?
These are messages between Harley's phone and Mr. Stauch's phone.
And why are the symbols here for these portions of coming from Harley's phone different than they've been before, where you can actually see Harley's picture inside of them?
We're not confident at all that this is Harley sending these messages. We believe it's the defendant.
Is that based in part off of the information that Janine Sanchez gave us when she testified very early on in this trial?
That and Harley's statements.
Okay. So the 9:16 p.m. to 9:19 p.m., tell us about that entry.
Harley's phone messages Mr. Stauch saying, "I need to be able to get all my belongings tomorrow with my grandma so that I have a place to live with my family, please." Mr. Stauch says, "Call me." Then the reply is, "No, I don't want to. I do not want to live there. I just need to know that I can do that privately with my grandma present." Mr. Stauch says, "Okay, whatever you need, I will support you. You taking Chance and Sadie," those are the two dogs. And the response is, "Will that be okay to load up all of my things alone?" And Mr. Stauch replies with, Harley, I will be there to help you. Obviously, I want you to stay, and you know that, but I understand your feelings. And the response is, I need their supplies too. They were left with no way to go out, and I feel I will give them a better care. Mr. Stauch says, not true. The deputies took them out and fed them. I made sure if that and went home once to check. I think he meant I made sure of that and went home once to check.
The next entry is at 9:19 p.m. to 9:24 p.m. What is that?
This is just a continuation. The response to Mr. Stauch was, they need love, not just going out. Mr. Stauch says, we all do. The response is, again, is it okay that my grandma and I load up my things? Mr. Stauch says, yes, and I will be there to help and support you. The response is, I asked you, could we be alone? I do not want you things. Mr. Stauch says, I will not bother you, but I have a responsibility to you, and that isn't changing. And the response to Mr. Stauch is, I will get my cell changed tomorrow. Thank you. My family would like to be with me, and I'm asking that you understand that and let me get them. I want my mom's things too, because we wear a lot of the same things, and I have all my memory boxes. What day can I get everything alone? Mr. Stauch replies with, is Mama not coming home? Do you know something? Because we know nothing. And the response is, that's funny, because the lady showed me your thread.
Based on the context of this text exchange from Mr. Stauch to Harley Hunt's phone, in your mind, does it appear that Mr. Stauch thinks he's talking to Harley Hunt?
It appears Mr. Stauch thinks he's talking to the defendant.
Okay. And then 9:25 p.m. to 9:33 p.m., what is that entry?
Just a continuation. The response to Mr. Stauch is, please tell me I can get my things privately so my family can spend their money on a ticket in a rental truck. I have to tell them. Mr. Stauch says, tell them what? The response is, I asked, could I arrange a time to come privately with my family to get belongings? Mr. Stauch says, tell who? And then the response is, my grandma. And Mr. Stauch says, anyone can come, but I will be there, and a cop can be there too. And the response is, no one would take anything of yours. And Mr. Stauch says, Harley, I'm not worried about that. I have a responsibility here, and this is the right way.
The next entry is 9:30 p.m. to 9:33 p.m. Tell the jury about that entry.
This concludes this conversation and the day. Harley and the defendant and Ms. Sanchez are all at Ms. Sanchez's residence. And this is the last of the messages between Harley's phone and Mr. Stauch's phone for Wednesday. It begins with, okay, could it be just you and no one else? Mr. Stauch replies, yes. And the response is, and no one wants to talk, so we ask that as well. Mr. Stauch says, okay. And the response is, thank you, I will let you know when. Mr. Stauch says, okay, still can't find Gannon, BTW, which is for, by the way.
And is that the last entry on this timeline, page 2 of People's Exhibit 698?
It is.
Okay. And Your Honor,
Good time.
that's what I was just going to say.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we will take our afternoon read jackets if they want to do that.
Okay,
So,
thank you, Judge.
because I don't want anybody falling over.
I just
including
assumed
me.
that,
No, you got to keep the tie on. You got to keep the tie on.
I just assumed the court thought that we all had earned a beach vacation and so wanted to raise the temp in here.
Yeah,
May I proceed, Your Honor?
you may go ahead.
We had just finished, Mr. Clark, People's Exhibit 698, page 2 of 2. Now we're jumping to People's Exhibit 699. And those last timelines, were they more dense as far as information that was included on them as opposed to what we're going to see now going forward?
Oh, by far, yes.
Why is that?
A lot more data points that were significant to the investigation occurred during that time frame.
And what about the fact that there's no more telematics for the Tiguan? There's no more call detail records for the defendant's Colorado phone. Does that also play a role in this?
Absolutely.
All right. So when we start to look at People's 699, looking at the key again of sources of information for this exhibit, what are they?
It's Mr. Stauch's phone download and Harley's phone download.
And looking at the timeline brackets, what day is this?
This is Thursday, January 30th, and this encompasses significant events for the whole day.
All right. Let me get to a good zoom level here. All right. So the first entry on this, there's no time listed there. Why is that?
So the defendant and Harley are still at the Sanchez residence. That's where they stayed the night.
And then the first entry with the time is at 4:38 a.m. What is that information?
That's Harley quitting her job at Massage Envy. So it's a message from Harley's phone to her supervisor at 4:38 a.m. that reads, I wanted to say that I thank you for being supportive and for our time at work. I know I provided an initial date that was for me leaving for BMT, which is basic military training. At this time, Harley was supposed to go into the Air Force. But due to safety concerns with my family situation, I need to take care of myself and make sure I am safe at this time. I hope you understand that this was an extenuating circumstance and hope that I can leave the company with a great relationship and future references. Thank you.
When we think back to the testimony from Harley Hunt, who, by indications of the investigation, actually penned that text message?
This message was authored by the defendant.
And I should have asked at the beginning, but the blue line indicating Gannon is missing, does it extend for the period, the total period of this particular day as well?
Does Gannon is still missing.
7:57 a.m. to 8:57 a.m. is the next timed entry. What is that entry?
These are more messages between Harley's phone and Mr. Stauch. And it starts with, my life was threatened on social media and told how people are looking for me. My grandma had threatened, so I do understand the pain and scaredness, but my mom did not do anything to harm Gannon. You should know that. I can come this afternoon to get my things. Mr. Stauch replies with, none of that is by me. You are always safe with me and you know that. And the response is, not by you, but you could stop it. Mr. Stauch replies with, social media is stupid. You should be with me. Your grandma and them should not have gone on there either. Call me. And the response to Mr. Stauch was, I did and you didn't answer. And Mr. Stauch says, no, I just called you and went straight to voicemail. VM. Harley, you are 17 and you are my responsibility. I know you are scared and confused about all this, but I'm making this very clear. I am asking you and Amy to come see me. I need to verify your safety. If you leave without seeing me first, I will fear for your safety and have to report it to police as missing runaway. If your mom signed consent, like you said, I must see it ASAP and have a copy and must specify who you're allowed to leave with. This is the issue I was trying to avoid by sending you to safety yesterday, but you chose to not do that. Either way, maintain constant contact with me and keep me informed of your location. I will not come and try to bother you, but I have to know you are safe at all times. Love you.
And let me break in there just so we can make the record clear. You referenced Amy, spell that Amy's name.
AIMEE.
And who is that in reference to?
That's Amy Lowry, the defendant's sister.
Okay. And then picking up there after that text from Mr. Stauch to Harley Hunt's phone, what is the response to that?
The response is, I'm not scared. Why would you do this when I don't want to be around you? Be with Landon. You turned on my mom. I want to be with my grandma, my uncle, and my aunt. I'm not your child, nor will ever be. And then Mr. Stauch responded with, I disagree, but I respect your opinion. I have to visually confirm your safety. After that, if you decide to leave with your family, we will work through that. Where can we meet? I'm about to go to Lena's school so we can meet there or close to the house. And the response was, you promised I could get my things with my family, and you said no one would be there but you. And Mr. Stauch responded with, yes, but you are not working with me.
And for context purposes, when we're talking about this Thursday, January 30th, does this coincide with, or what day did it occur when the defendant and Harley went back to 6627 Mandan Drive to get things out of the house?
That's going to be the next day. That's
Okay.
on Friday.
Is that what they're referencing here in these text messages, though? Efforts to go to the house to get those things?
They want to be alone. They don't want to be bothered by anybody or ask any questions. They just want to show up and take their belongings and leave.
And so that the record is clear, they being who?
The defendant.
Okay. The next timed entry is at 8:57 a.m. and stretches to 10:37 a.m. What are we looking at there?
This is Harley's phone. It's a continuation of the conversation with Mr. Stauch. And it starts with, I'm not. You will do me like you did mom. Please stop. You have your car. Give it to Landon. I paid for it all this time. Stop trying to force me to do something.
And let me break in there just for reference purposes. The car that's being referenced there, what is being discussed?
It's the Volkswagen Jetta.
The Volkswagen Jetta assigned to Harley Hunt?
That's her primary vehicle, yes.
Okay. And then pick up from there.
Mr. Stauch says, I'm not getting into a text battle. I need to confirm your safety. And then what you do from there is your decision. Someone is influencing you wrongly. And the response was, influencing me to go with my blood family. We have the same blood. So how is that wrong? I'm safe, so please let me come with my family to get my things. Mr. Stauch says, I have to visually confirm. And the response was, I'm not meeting you. What is wrong with you? I do not want to be around you. I'm afraid to be around you if my mom is not there. Mr. Stauch replies with 10:30 at the house to get your stuff. And the response is, I've been asking for confirmation because we need to get a rental truck to transport. We could never get that from you, so we have to make the plans. Mr. Stauch responds with, that means nothing to authorities. Please meet at 10:30. The response is, why are you trying to take me? What do you get out of forcing me when I hate you now? No one is influencing me. I hate you. Mr. Stauch replies with, not forcing you, only confirming your safety. The response was, you mean nothing to me, none of you. You set my mom up so you could be with your ex-wife. I hate you. Mr. Stauch replies with, well, I love you, and I'm sorry you feel that way. And the response is, if you don't want to be with me and my mom, then you can't have me. She is the best mom ever, and she would not harm anyone. You are doing this for control. Mom's attorney is coming to get her things. He will have an order.
And just for context purposes, based on your knowledge of the investigation, who do you believe to be operating Harley Hunt's phone at that time?
I believe this to be the defendant.
The next entry is at 11:06 a.m. What is that?
So the defendant's family arrives in Colorado. They arrive to Denver International Airport, and they rent, specifically her aunt, Brenda Acquard, rents a 2020 Nissan Altima.
During the period that this Nissan Altima is in play as being rented by Aunt Acquard, did the defendant have some access to this car by herself?
She did.
Okay. The next entry is at 1:24 p.m. What is that?
This is when the defendant and Harley go to the Marshalls located at 1760 East Woodman Road. And that's where the Volkswagen Jetta and Harley's phone were seized by the Paso County Sheriff's Office.
Does that then now diminish even further points of data going forward now that Harley Hunt's phone is also seized?
It does. None of the original data points that we've seen up to this point are in play anymore. We've seized 2 cars and 2 phones.
And was there telematics associated with the VW Jetta?
No,
Is that the last entry on People's Exhibit 699?
it is.
Moving on to People's Exhibit 700. And while I'm zooming in on this, these same exhibits that we're looking at on the screen, are these printed out and on boards back on the back wall there,
They are.
giving the jury access to them back in the deliberation room at some point?
Yes.
Same exact things?
Same exact things.
Looking at People's Exhibit number 700, what are the sources of information for this portion of the timeline?
So we have FBI CAS data because you may recall Sergeant Roy Ditzler testifying that he placed a GPS tracker on the Altima later in the afternoon on this Friday. And then we also have some American Express financials, some transactions.
In the period of time for this particular timeline, People's Exhibit 700 is what?
Friday, January 31st, encompassing the entire day.
Okay. And then does the Gannon is missing indicator line extend for the entirety of this day as well?
Yes, Gannon is still missing.
Starting at the first timed entry on the timeline at 9:44 a.m., what do we have there?
So at 9:44 a.m., the family goes to the Enterprise located at 421 North Chelton Road. And by the family, that is the defendant and Harley, along with Aunt Brenda Awkward, Mom Deb Lowry, and then brother Dakota Lowry.
And Dakota Lowry, is that the same person that testified in front of this jury early on in this trial?
That's him. And they rent a 2019 Ford Transit van, and we'll refer to that as van number 1 for the next essentially 24 hours.
And why do we have to designate van number 1 and then a secondary van number 2?
Because tomorrow, on Saturday, the defendant rents a similar van, but from budget.
Okay.
And that's van number 2.
11:19 a.m., what's the entry there?
So we're on Friday, 11:19 a.m. The van with the family and the Nissan Altima with the defendant, and the family means all of them, they all arrived to 6627 Mandan Drive to take out the defendant and Harley's belongings.
And then the next entry at 12:10 p.m., what is that?
That is when the KKTV interview was done by Spencer Wilson with primarily the defendant and with a brief appearance by Harley.
And we heard testimony from Spencer Wilson on that point as well, is that right?
We did. And then in the frame, you actually see the back end of the van number 1.
How many times roughly during that interview did the defendant reference Gannon's name? You know,
It was 9 to 12, if I remember correctly.
and
It
you
was-
have, I'm sorry, finish your sentence.
I think it was less than, it was no more than 16. I think 12 is the number that comes to mind.
And then how many references by the defendant to I, me, or my? Do you have any idea?
It was over 100.
The next entry is at 3:26 p.m. and 3:38 p.m. What is that information?
So after the interview, the family with the 2 vehicles returned to where they're staying, which is the Extended Stay of America located at 5855 Corporate Drive. And we know that the defendant stayed in room number 103. And so they arrived there at 3:26, and the tracker went on the Nissan Altima at 3:38.
And then looking above the line, there's a reference to CAS report, page 43. Why is that particular page significant for this portion of time on the timeline?
The Altima returns to the S-curve.
All right. So going below the line, looking at 3:45 p.m., what is that indicating?
So the tracker was placed at 3:38. Less than 10 minutes later, the Nissan Altima departs the extended stay and starts traveling north on I-25.
Based on your understanding, who was in control of the Nissan Altima at that time?
The defendant.
There was some testimony during Harley Hunt's testimony about the defendant and actually also with Dakota Lowry leaving for a period of time and nobody knew where she was. Is that this period of time that we're about to talk about?
Yes, it is.
All right. The next timed entry is 4:41 p.m. What is that?
That's the Nissan Altima pinging with the GPS tracker at the S-curve.
And what is the time brackets where this Nissan Altima goes up to Southern Douglas County to that S-curve and then returns back down?
It's not long. We've got from 4:16 p.m. where it went further north and then double backed to 5:13 p.m. So it's about an hour.
Okay. And then the next entry is at 5:37 p.m. to 5:41 p.m.
The Nissan went through the Starbucks drive-through located at 1150 Interquest Parkway. And so we have GPS data and we have a financial transaction from American Express for $5, I think.
And so this is after the Nissan Altima is at the S-curve, goes to Starbucks?
Yeah, it goes to the S-curve and then it comes back down and goes to Starbucks.
Based on your knowledge of the investigation, What did the defendant do up at the S-curve?
So this is when we believe that the defendant picked up the suitcase that had Gannon in it from the S-curve.
And then subsequent to this, so after this point, is that when the board was found at some point later on in the investigation?
Yes, we found a piece of the board, which I testified to a couple weeks ago, that matched the photo in Al's phone of the same type of board, same shape, same damage, that kind of thing. I believe it's the same board. That was found at the S-curve in a little ravine.
The next entry at 5:56 p.m. to 6:19 p.m., what is that entry?
The vehicle goes to Petco, the same one that the defendant went to with Gannon in the red truck on Monday, located at 5020 North Nevada Avenue. And there was a financial transaction for $32.
And then the last entry at 6:23 p.m. to 6:26 p.m., what is that?
It arrives back to the extended stay and then parks at its final spot for the night at 6:26 p.m.
All right. Is that the last entry for the timeline of 700 on January 31st, 2020?
Yes, this takes us through Friday, January 31st.
Moving on to People's Exhibit 701. What are the sources of information for People's Exhibit 701?
So we have the CAS report because the tracker is still on the Ultima at this time, but the van that the defendant rented from Budget has a built-in GPS tracker on it that pings every 6 hours, as well as a power-up event that occurs every 24 to 25 hours. And then we also have USA financials as well as American Express financials.
The USA financials and the American Express financials, are those accounts associated to the defendant?
To the defendant, yes.
Okay. Same for the other exhibits that have the same information on them?
Correct.
The blue line indicating Gannon is missing, does that extend for the entirety of this timeline as well?
Yes, Gannon is still missing, and this timeline covers the period of Saturday, February 1st through February 4th.
Okay. Starting with the first timed entry, you have that squiggly line and then 8 a.m. What do you have? Why do you have the squiggly line there again?
So the information that we have is that the van number one, with Dakota, Lowry, and the defendant in it, departs the extended stay right around 8 a.m.
Where did they go to?
They drive to the Budget, which is located at 140 East Garden of the Gods Road, where the defendant rents a van number two for $679 using the American Express.
Does that coincide with the testimony that we got from the person from Budget about that van rental and went through the receipt and all that sort of thing?
From him as well as her brother Dakota.
Okay. And then I just want to have you point out visually the two different vans. Do they look different on the timeline?
They do. So van number one has windows. Van number two does not have windows. This is more accurate depiction of what van number two looked like, the one that they drove to South Carolina.
Okay. And then moving on to 10:10 a.m., there's a line above that goes to CAS report page 45. Why is that significant for that timeline?
The van has left Colorado Springs area and is at the Love's gas station just outside of Pueblo.
Is that what's the source of that information?
That's going to be the ping data from the built-in GPS tracker on the van that Budget places on their vehicles that go out of state.
Okay. And does that show a purchase being made at that Love's Travel Center in Pueblo?
Yes. So we have a coinciding purchase for $8.34 at the time that the van gives a ping.
Okay. The next timed entry is 11:57 a.m. to 12:20 p.m. What is that entry?
So this is when the defendant and Harley go to the Walmart located at 2921 Topol Drive in Trinidad, and the defendant purchases phone number two. It's a prepaid Verizon wireless phone with a 407 area code, and there's a corresponding charge from the USA account for $89.03.
There was testimony from the person that searched that van back in Rhode Island, and there was a Verizon prepaid calling card in that glove box. Do you remember that?
I do.
Did you do some research on that particular item?
I did.
What did you find when you researched that calling card?
We wrote a search warrant to Verizon for the numbers that are on the back of the prepaid card, and it confirms that it links to this prepaid phone purchased at the Walmart on this day and time.
You have a time zone change there. Why'd you put a time zone change?
We're moving from Mountain Time to Central Time. She's now driving through Texas.
All right. The next timed entry, 7:49 p.m., is above the line referencing CAS report page 48. Why is that significant for that time frame?
So this is now, instead of AT&T like we saw earlier, it's now her Verizon phone number two. We have, works the same technology. You have a date and a time, a cell phone tower that provides service to the phone, and then a direction, a sector as to where that phone is at. So the CAS report shows phone number two, the Verizon phone, purchased at the Walmart earlier that day at the hotel where they stayed the night.
And then going forward now, are we going to have potentially two sources of data, both the GPS information from the van and then call detail records for this phone that was bought in Trinidad, Colorado?
Yes, that's what will be in the CAS report, and then we'll also have financials that will be on the timeline.
Okay. The entry at 11:10 p.m., what is that?
So that's the 6-hour scheduled ping for the van, and it's in the parking lot of the Candlewood Suites, located at 18 Western Plaza Drive in Amarillo, Texas. And we have a corresponding charge a few hours earlier for $91.
The next entry, I'm sorry, do we have a date change there?
Yes, so they stay the night at this Candlewood Suites, and then the van sits at that Candlewood through the morning of Sunday, February 2nd of 2020, with the scheduled power up to 12 a.m. and then the 5:10, 11:10 a.m. Pings.
Does this indicate that they're still potentially at the Candlewood Suites, have not started driving for that day?
That's correct.
Maybe slipped in or something like that?
That's correct. It hasn't moved.
7:38 p.m. Is that the next entry?
It is. There's a $25 charge on the American Express. This time, Candlewood Suites, but in Decatur, Texas. 601 West Thompson Street is the Candlewood Suites. And then we have a corresponding 11:10 p.m. GPS ping. So they traveled from Amarillo to Decatur on February 2nd.
Do they spend the night in Decatur, Texas into the morning and day of February 3rd?
They do.
What's the next timed entry at 3:14 a.m. to 5:10 a.m.?
We have the power up event, and then we have the scheduled 6-hour ping alert. And the van is still at the Candlewood Suites in Decatur, Texas.
And I should have asked you to clarify this, but on those van schedule alerts, you have in the line, it says stopped, stopped for those different references.
Yes.
Why do you have that word stop there, and what does that mean?
It means it's parked. So we mapped out all of the pings, and sometimes it was traveling on the highway. And when it's traveling, it gives you where it's at and how fast it's going. And so this is just important, showing that's just parked in the parking lot of the hotel.
Okay. And then moving into February 4th, did they spend the night in Decatur, Texas?
They did.
And then the next timed entry is at 12:22 a.m. What is that?
So we're now into February 4th. It's a Tuesday. At 12:22 a.m., the defendant's American Express was charged for $106 at the Candlewood Suites, located at 1953 North Cross Lane in Pensacola, Florida.
Why is the stop at that Candlewood Suites in Pensacola, Florida, significant for the investigation?
That's where Gannon would later be found, nearby under a bridge.
Okay. Let me ask you whether you know this or not. Was surveillance video, like we had the surveillance video from the Amarillo, Texas Candlewood Suites. Was there able to be video obtained from the Pensacola, Florida Candlewood Suites?
Unfortunately, there was not. It had already been overwritten.
Okay. The next entry is at 4:15 a.m. and it goes above the line to the cast report page 54. Why is that cast report page significant for this timeline?
So it shows the towers and sectors that service the Verizon phone number 2, that provide coverage to the Candlewood Suites where they stayed the night. We've got 2 scheduled pings at 5:10 a.m. and 11:10 a.m. in the parking lot of the Candlewood Suites. But then we had one of those power-up events at 4:15 a.m. And here's where Gannon was later found, and here's where that power-up event occurred. And so sometime between 12:22 a.m., when the defendant checked into the hotel, and 4:15 a.m., the van had moved. It was less than,
Was it 1.8 miles from that point to where Gannon was?
I was say less than 2 miles, and it was 1.8 miles from that ping to where Gannon was found.
And actually, I think I took you down the wrong path. So the 1.8 miles, based on the cast page there, do you see the brackets?
That's from the hotel to the ping. It's less than 2 miles from the ping to where Gannon was found.
Okay. Just want to make sure we made that correction. The 5:10 a.m. to 11:10 a.m. Entry, what is that telling us?
Those are the scheduled every 6-hour pings, and those are technically in the Comfort Inn parking lot, but the Comfort Inn shares a parking lot with the Candlewood Suites when you look at it on a map.
So does that mean that the Candlewood Suites and that Comfort Inn are right next to each other?
Right next to each other with a shared parking lot.
All right. What about the address for that Comfort Inn? It says on the line on that entry 8080 North Davis Highway, Ferry Pass, Florida, whereas the Comfort Inn says 1953 North Cross Lane, Pensacola, Florida.
Sure. It's the same zip code. And so that's just how they're registered online with their address.
Okay.
I confirm they're right next to each other, and then one just faces one street for the addressing, and the other faces a southern street for the addressing.
Okay. The next entry is 11:44 a.m. What is that?
That's a financial. Harley goes in and buys breakfast at the McDonald's, which is like less than a block from that Candlewood Suites.
The next entry you have is a time zone change. Is that right?
That's correct. We go from Central Time to Eastern Time.
All right. The next timed entry you have is at 11:32 p.m. and it points upwards to a cast report page 56. Excuse me, page 56. Why is that cast report page significant for this timeline?
It corroborates what the van pings are saying with the call detail records, along with the financials, that the phones continue to travel down south and stays in the Orlando area.
And does the financial show a check-in at an Orlando hotel?
Yes, the Holiday Inn, 11:32 p.m. There was a $315.70 charge made to the Holiday Inn in Orlando, Florida.
Is that the last entry on this particular timeline?
Yes, so this takes us through Tuesday, February 4th of 2020.
Okay. Moving on to People's Exhibit 702. Again, for reference purposes, what are the sources of information for People's Exhibit 702?
We still have defendant's phone number 2, the Verizon phone that she purchased at the Trinidad Walmart, as well as the scheduled and power up pings off of the rental van that are in the cast report.
And then what are the relevant time spans for this particular exhibit?
So this goes from February 5th, which is a Wednesday, all the way till March 17th of 2020.
Does this cover then the time frame of when the defendant is ultimately arrested in South Carolina?
It does.
Does it stretch all the way to the point when Gannon's remains are found under that bridge?
It ends when we find Gannon.
Okay. So the first entry on this is which day and time?
So this is February 5th. It's a Wednesday, 2020.
And then you've got a line going up to cast report page 57. Why do you have that going up to that particular page at that time?
This shows where the van and the phone are at during this time.
Does this basically just show the